Hello and welcome to my Mario Gnome tutorial. This is Nova at Nova Gnome Creations, and I hope that you enjoy. This is going to be done in multiple parts, so if this is the part you are looking for, cool, stay here, and if it's not, check the description box. I will have the playlist linked as well as the other videos directly. The materials that you are going to need for this crochet along are going to be a red yarn, a blue yarn, a brown yarn, a skin tone colored yarn, and a white yarn. You also may need some black yarn depending on how you choose to do certain parts. You can use whatever weight yarn you would like to. I will be using a worsted weight 4 yarn and a 3.5 millimeter hook. So if you would like to use those, then go for it. If not, just make sure that you downsize your hook from whatever is recommended on the ball band for your yarn. That way your stitches are nice and tight and you don't see your polyfill through. You're also going to want a crochet hook, a stitch marker, a darning needle, and possibly a longer darning needle if you have one, some scissors, possibly some tweezers if you'd like to be able to tweeze off any little stray polyfills, but you can use your hands for that, and potentially something to weigh down the bottom of your project if you would like to use river rocks, aquarium rocks, beads. You can do little organza bags of rice or beans, uncooked dry rice and beans. Really, there's anything you can use that is going to put a little bit of weight in the bottom of your project and help it stand. And I believe that is everything. If you would like to hot glue parts on, you're going to want your hot glue and your hot glue gun. And if you would like to use felt for any of some of the details, you will need the felt. And you would need felt in like white, black, and I think that's all, potentially blue. But that is up to you and if you decide to use felt. The first thing that you are going to want to do is grab the brown. We are going to start from the bottom up, and we're going to be working our Mario Gnome's feet first. And we are going to work as much of this in a continuous piece as we possibly can, just so that there is as little sewing as possible. So we are going to work our way up for the feet and the body, and we will do this in a continuous piece. So go ahead and grab your brown yarn and your crochet hook. So I have got my Lion Brand cotton worsted weight yarn here, and that is what I'm using for my feet. And then I have my 3.5 millimeter crochet hook and my stitch marker. So most times when you're starting out making an amigurumi, you start with a magic circle. And because this project, we want to work some width to it and not just make a circle, we're actually going to start with something a little bit different, but that has worked similar to when you make a magic circle. To do this, we're actually going to start with a chain though. So go ahead and take your yarn and make a slip stitch or a slip knot. And once you've got your slip knot, we are going to be chaining 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Once you've got your chain of 9, we are going to skip this chain that's closest to our hook, and we are going to single crochet into the second one. So the second chain from your hook, you're going to go ahead and do a single crochet. And go ahead and place a stitch marker into that first single crochet. Now we're going to continue going down into the next 6 stitches, 7 if you include the one that we just did, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and that leaves us with one chain left unworked, and that is on purpose because we are about to go into it. So what you're going to do in this last chain is you're actually going to work 3 single crochets, and we're doing that because we're going to go around this corner. So you're going to work 1 single crochet. In the same spot, you're going to work another single crochet, and then again in that same spot you're going to work a 3rd single crochet, and that's just going to kind of round you around the corner at the end of your chain. Now that we are on this side, you can work over this chain or over this tail if you would like to. If that's too confusing and you would rather just weave it in later, you can just leave it and not work over it. That is totally up to you. And now on the back side of our chain, we are going to work 6 single crochets, and you're going to be working them in the opposite side of this chain. So it's not really in stitches, but in like these single loops that you see. And you're going to be working 6 of those, and it's going to be the same as when we were doing the other side, where in the last stitch or the last partial chain piece we're working in, you'll be able to work 3 single crochets to round the corner. So you see how I've got the corner rounded here, and it kind of brings me to this other side, and now I'm just working 6 single crochets. So I've got 1, 2 single crochets, 3 single crochets, kind of show you what you're working under here. It's these little loops. And if you're not careful, you can actually work under multiple loops at a time. So just kind of be aware of what it is we're working under. It's these. Our 5th single crochet, our 6th single crochet, and our 7th single crochet. And here's what we're looking like right now. We've got 1 more chain that's unworked. And don't forget, we actually had a chain that we used that we did not work into when we made our initial chain and then turned and skipped one. And that is what this is. We are just going to ignore it and pretend that it is not there. So don't crochet into that. So this last chain that we have, we are going to do the same thing that we did when we were working in this other corner. So if you've worked over this tail now, you can go ahead and leave that and go ahead and cut it now, or cut it here in a minute if you'd like to. It should be worked in enough, or you can continue to work over it. That is totally up to you. So here's our last stitch, our last chain. We are going to put 3 single crochets into it. So 1, 2, and 3. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker, and we are going to be working our single crochet right into that stitch. We're not going to be slip stitching or anything like that. We're just going to work in a continuous round. So after you place that first single crochet, go ahead and replace your stitch marker. And we are going to go ahead and crochet 7. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And after we crochet 7, we are going to be going into the increased corners where we put 3 in the corner. And we are going to do an increase in each of these 3 stitches. Now what an increase is when you place 2 stitches into 1 single stitch. So in this first single crochet of our corner, we're going to go ahead and place 2 single crochets in that same stitch. And that is an increase. Then in the next one, we're going to do another increase, and that's going to be 2 single crochets into that same stitch. And for our third stitch of the corner, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to place an increase into this third stitch. And then we're just going to continue single crocheting. So now we're going to single crochet 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, and 6. And then we're back to our little threes. So in this first one, we are going to go ahead and do an increase. So we're going to do 2 single crochets. And then in the next stitch, we're going to do another increase. So 2 single crochets in that same stitch. And in our final stitch, we are going to be doing 2 single crochets. So we effectively turned what was a 19 stitch round for the last round into a 25 count round. So if you would like to make sure that your stitches are adding up, you should have 25 stitches right now. And it should be looking a little something like this. The next thing we're going to do is remove this stitch marker, and we are going to start to round out just a little bit. So we're going to be doing a repeat for this round of a single crochet, a single crochet, and then an increase. So go ahead and place that first single crochet into that first stitch and replace your stitch marker, and then your second single crochet, and then you're going to do an increase in this round, or in this stitch, which is 2 single crochets in the same stitch. And that's going to be our repeat for the round. So we're going to continue to repeat doing 2 single crochets and then an increase. And we're going to do that until we get back to our stitch marker. And once you've made your way back around, you're going to have 1 single crochet left here that's kind of extra. And we are just going to pop a single crochet into that stitch. And it should look a little something like this. So for this next round, we're going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker. And we're going to place a single crochet into our first stitch and replace the stitch marker. For this round, we are going to be doing the same thing as last round. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase. So single crochet, and then in this stitch, we're going to do 2 single crochets because that is how we do an increase. And then we're going to do single crochet, and increase. And you are just going to repeat that around until you get back to your stitch marker. And when you get back to the end, it should be looking something like this, kind of resembles a mitochondria. You should have 43 stitches at this point. Now we are going to begin to work upwards and form our little feet. So the way that we are going to do that is we are going to work some back loop only stitches. So just so that you are aware, so that you know how to do your back loop only stitches, this is the outside of your work. This side where we either have woven in our tail or worked over our tail, you'll notice the stitches are kind of different looking. This is actually the inside of our work. So that is important to know, because when you work a back loop only stitch, you are going to be working in just this back loop of the stitch instead of in the whole stitch. So you'll notice there's a front loop right here that we are not going under. You would normally go under both of these to do a stitch, but we are only going to go under this back loop. So we're going to just do single crochets all the way around in the back loops only. And our stitch count will be the same, so you'll still have 43 stitches, and you're just going to work in each back loop only of all of these single crochets, and you're going to work a single crochet into it. And this will start to cup up our work and form our little legs. Once you've finished working your way around, it should look a little something like this. And you should have this ridge on the outside of your work, and that is going to be where it starts to cup up along this ridge to start working into the legs, or the bottom of the feet, actually. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and remove that stitch marker, pop that first single crochet into here, and replace our stitch marker. And then we are going to do single crochet, which we've already done, and then an increase. We're going to do this 7 times, 7 sets of a single crochet and an increase. So there was 1 set, single crochet, increase. There was our 2nd set, single crochet, and then an increase. There is our 3rd set, single crochet, and then an increase. There's our 4th set, single crochet, increase. For our 5th set, single crochet, increase. There is our 6th set, and finally single crochet and increase for our final 7th set. Okay, so you have single crocheted and increased alternating all the way up to here, and then we are just going to single crochet the rest of the way around. So just single crochet in every stitch until you get back to your stitch marker. And when you get back to your stitch marker, it should start looking a little something like this, kind of giving like a little bit of a boat sort of look. And this one side is going to be bigger because we have done the increases over here. Now we are just going to work 3 rounds of single crochet. So you're just going to pop out that stitch marker and single crochet into that first stitch and replace it. And then you're going to single crochet in every stitch around until you get back to your stitch marker, but you're going to do that 3 times. So all the way around and back to your stitch marker, all the way around and back to your stitch marker, and all the way around and back to your stitch marker. So when you have completed 3 rounds of single crochet, I will meet you back and we will continue on. And here is what we should be looking like. So we've got it forming a nice little cupped section for our little feet. And you'll notice the front is a little wonky shaped, and that is intentional. So it should be looking a little something like this, and you should still have 50 stitches because we were just doing single crochets around after those increases. But now we are going to do something a little bit different. We are going to suck back in where we had increased. And the reason I'm doing this little odd shape at the front is it's for the feet. We will come back and shape it more later, but we are shaping the crochet itself right now. So we are going to do the opposite of what we had done before. We're going to do a single crochet, and we're going to throw that stitch marker back in there. But this time we're going to do a 7 sets of single crochet decrease. So we're going to do a single crochet, and then we're going to do a decrease. And since this is the first decrease in this project, I'm just going to take a minute to show you how to do an invisible decrease in case you don't know. When I do amigurumi, I do invisible decreases because they look nicer on the body of the amigurumi. And the way that you do that is you only go under the front loop instead of under the whole stitch. And you're going to actually go under the front loop of the next stitch as well. You're not going to yarn over or anything, you just go under both of those. Then you yarn over and you pull through both of those stitches that are on your hook, and then you yarn over and you pull through the last 2 stitches. And that is how you do an invisible decrease. And the reason it's called a decrease is because you'll notice that we worked through 2 stitches on the body, but we only made 1 stitch as far as what comes out on top. So we're getting rid of a stitch. And that was 1 set of a single crochet and a decrease. So we're just going to do that 7 times. So single crochet, oops, and a decrease. That's our second one. Single crochet, and a decrease. And that's our third set. Single crochet and a decrease, and that is our fourth set. Single crochet and a decrease, that is our fifth set. Single crochet and a decrease for our sixth set. And lastly, one single crochet and a decrease, and that is our seventh set. So I say we're working 7 sets of single crochet decrease. You are going to have 14 stitches on the top. So if you want to be able to count and make sure that you did it right, you can count back to your stitch marker, and you should have 14 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And the reason for that is we had 21 stitches in between the stitch marker and where we are, but 7 of these stitches were decreases. So they became 1 stitch instead of 2. And so you should have 14 right here. You should have 7 single crochets and 7 decreases. And then we're just going to continue around doing only single crochets now. So just single crochet in every stitch until you get back to your stitch marker. Here is what we are currently sitting at. We are at 43 stitches, and it should look a little something like this. Now we are going to be bringing our blue in. So go ahead and grab your blue yarn so that you have it handy, and we are going to work some stitches in brown first. We are going to go ahead and we are going to single crochet 30 single crochets. So place that first single crochet and place that stitch marker back in there, and then continue on until you have done 30 single crochets. And we're just doing that so that we can bring our blue in the back and make our color change a little more hidden. So I'm at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. And for stitch 30, you're going to start your stitch. You're going to go through your stitch, grab the yarn and pull it through, but don't yarn over and pull through those 2 like you would. You're actually going to yarn over in the blue. And that is how we are going to do our color change. So go ahead and grab your blue yarn. I am using a Big Twist Value yarn in the colorway of Sapphire. That just happened to be what I had, but there are probably blues that are a little bit more fitting for Mario's overalls. So feel free to use whatever you would like to. And then I'm just going to place this yarn over my hook, have the tail on the inside of my work, and I'm going to pull it through those 2 stitches to finish that single crochet. Then I'm going to take my brown yarn tail and I'm going to cut it. It only needs to be a couple of inches long so that I can knot it off. It's just going to go hidden in the inside of our work, so we don't need to worry about leaving it long enough to sew with. And I like to make a little knot with my newly attached color and my old color. So I just go on the inside of my work and knot my old color together and my new color together. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a double knot and then a triple knot just for extra security. And then that is going to go on the inside of my work. And then you just continue to single crochet in your new color. So we are going to do 13 more single crochets, which is just how many single crochets are left to bring us to the end of the round. So working back to our stitch marker with our new color. All right, and it should look a little something like this right now. Like I said, we just moved this color change back to there instead of doing it at the beginning of a round, because then it's nicely in the back instead of the front of our work. And where this little bump out is where the shoes are going to be, so this is going to be the front of our work. And we will come through later and put a little division here to kind of shape it more into legs. But for now, it just has, you know, kind of a little lumpy look up front. We are now just going to work some single crochet rounds to get the height of our body. So let's go ahead and work 6 single crochet rounds in our blue. So remove your stitch marker and throw that single crochet in there. And you can go ahead and replace your stitch marker, and all you're going to do is crochet all the way around with single crochets until you get back to your stitch marker, and you're going to do that 6 times. So single crocheting around till you get to your stitch marker, that counts as 1 round. So do that 6 times and then I will meet you back. And once you've finished your 6 rounds in the blue, it should look a little something like this. And like this from the side, it's going to kind of bubble out here in the front where the feet are going to be. And here is what the back looks like. And here's what the inside looks like. So here is what we've got going on. So to continue on, we are going to be working in on only the front loop. So this is the whole stitch right here that you normally go through when you make a single crochet or any stitch. You work through both of these loops. Well, this is the front loop only. It is the closest to you loop. And we are going to be working under only the front loops all the way around. And then you're just going to do a slip stitch as normal. So the only difference is that you're working it through the front loop only. And we are going to be doing these front loop onlys all the way around, and then we are going to be attaching on with our red. And then we'll work the red in the back loops. So go ahead and continue doing your slip stitches in the front loop only all the way around, and I will meet you back when we get back to the stitch marker. And now that we've made it back to our stitch marker, we can go ahead and pop this out. And we are just going to slip stitch into the next front loop only. And chain 1. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to cut our yarn. Just leaving a little tail, not much. And we are going to weave that in and hide it inside. So I'm going to pull my hook up. Pull tight on that so that it tightens the little knot that our chain made. And then I'm going to thread my yarn onto my darning needle. And so right now this is on the outside of our work. I want this tail to be on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right down here, right below this stitch, and I'm going to pull through. And I can hide the tail on the inside, but I also want to make sure that this stays like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave back and forth a little bit inside of my work, just on the surface of the inside of these stitches. So not going through the whole stitches, just kind of catching some of the fibers and pulling my yarn through that. And I'm going to do that one more time. And that should keep my yarn where I want it to be. So now I can just stick this tail inside of my work, and it effectively just disappears. So here's where we hit our yarn, and you can't even tell. And now we are going to be switching to our red yarn. Got here my Big Twist Varsity Red value yarn, and I am going to be coming in and working in the back loop onlys that I left. So I am going to start right around where I ended. So I know I ended about right here. And keep in mind we're going to be working in these back loop onlys. And it's a little more difficult to see where we stopped. They go down just a little bit, and what I recommend doing is actually starting in this back loop only that was the last back loop only when we went around, because it's up a little higher and it'll make the transition a little bit more seamless, since there is a little bit of a what's called a jog here, where the since we're working in a continuous spiral, the stitches are a little lower down and then they get a little higher by the end of the round. So here is how I'm going to connect on. I'm going to create a slip knot. I'm going to tighten that up just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my work is facing the correct way. So make sure you're facing it with the front facing you, and kind of see where your back loop only stitches are. Most of them are pretty easy to see. It's all of this. But where you finish off, sometimes it can be a little harder to see. So hopefully the demonstration helps a little bit. So I'm going to slip stitch on. And then in that same stitch, I'm going to work a single crochet. And then I'm going to find my next back loop only. And I'm going to work another single crochet. And this is just going to be a back loop only single crochet round. So the whole way around, you're just going to be grabbing those back loop onlys that we left unworked and doing single crochets. Just like so. And like I said, we did it this way so that it creates like a 3D effect for our overalls. And we will be making straps for the overalls and making them look more like overalls, but this is just what it looks like at this current stage of creation. So you're just going to keep working in those back loop onlys and doing your single crochets, and it is going to look like this. It's going to give you kind of a little 3D effect and make it look like a piece of clothing. So go ahead and keep working your single crochets into the back loop onlys, and I will meet back up with you when we get back to the first stitch. Which, by the way, you are free to put a stitch marker in that first stitch if you want to. The only reason I did not is because I can very easily see where I started, since it has like a bright new color, but you totally can put a stitch marker in your first stitch if you want to. Okay, and as you make your way back to the first stitch, Just keep in mind that you did make a slip stitch on, so there's going to be kind of a little funky looking beginning. Let me make sure you're focused. So there's going to be kind of a little funky looking beginning there. There's a little loop. You're just going to ignore that. And you're going to go into that first single crochet. And you're going to work a single crochet. And now don't forget to replace your stitch marker. So we are just going to work some single crochet rounds at this point. And we are going to do 4 rounds of single crochet. So go around 4 times back to that stitch marker, and then I will meet you back. And once you're done working those 4 rounds of single crochet in your red, we are going to be doing some decreasing. So go ahead and remove your stitch marker. And we are going to be working some invisible decreases. Now, just a quick refresher, invisible decreases you work by grabbing the front loop of this first stitch and the front loop of the second stitch, yarning over, pulling through both, yarning over, and pulling through both. And we are actually going to decrease our way all the way around. We are cinching in before we do our transition to our head. And after we finish doing this round of decreases, we are going to do a little bit of work on the body. We're going to get it stuffed and all of that good jazz. So once we're done doing this decrease round, we will be done with our red for the time being. Oops. So just scoop up those 2 front loops and do those invisible decreases. And do that all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker. And because we have an odd number of stitches, we will end the round with a single crochet. All right, well, I'll go ahead and meet you back. All right, and as we worked our way back around and get back to our stitch marker, like I said, you will have one stitch that you can't decrease across, and I am just going to put a single crochet in that stitch. All right, and then we can go ahead and pull up on our hook, give ourselves a nice big loop here so that we don't lose our stitch while we're doing some work on the body. And then you can go ahead and grab your scissors and cut your yarn. We are done with the red for this portion of our gnome. Okay, so what we're going to be doing next is we are going to stuff our project, and if you would like to weight your projects down, this is also the time you can do that. You can put some river rocks down here, some aquarium glass down here, beads, little organza bags of rice or beans, dried beans and dried rice, obviously. There's a lot of different things that you can do to weight down the bottom of your plushie. Basically, just use what you have on hand and make it work. So I'm going to be using some rocks for mine. So I've got some river rocks here, and let me just make sure this is focused. And I've got more than that if I need them. Now, the thing is to keep in mind that we want to be able to split the bottom of this in half. So we are going to basically make a little line that's going to kind of indent in, and it's going to show the separation of the feet and the legs. So let me grab my sketch for you and show you what I'm talking about. So you see how there's a little bit of a line here? We are going to do that. So before we do that, though, we need to stuff our project. And like I said, if we're wanting to weight it down, we're going to go ahead and weight it down. So don't weight it down big in the middle. Weight it down kind of in two sections so that you're still able to divide down the middle here. So say you are doing like an organza bag with rice in it or something, instead of doing one big organza bag with rice in it right in the middle, maybe do 2 smaller ones that can be separated. So I'm just going to take some of these rocks and toss them in here. And I'm going to kind of put them off to the sides. Also, while I do this, I try to use the not as pretty ones because I like my rocks also. You can use that one. This one's got like a little yellowy tinge to it in a way that I don't want. That's probably good. Let's see. Checking out the ones I got. I like this one. All right, we'll throw that one in there, and then we will be good with our rocks. Now I'm just going to stuff my project. So I'm going to grab my polyfill. And good rule of thumb, you will always need more polyfill than you think you will. So a little, it looks like a lot, but it becomes a little once you start stuffing your project firmly. So I'm just going to grab a little handful and stick it in there. And one of the key things is you want to make sure that you shove it all the way to the bottom and really pack in all of the corners. So one thing I do want to do actually is I want to make sure that my rocks are kind of divided in half. So I'm going to do that before I stick that in there. There we go. And then I'm going to kind of stick this in the middle between the rocks and then continue to stuff. And we are just going to keep stuffing until we get a nice firm body worked up for our Mario gnome. And if you need to, you can use tools to assist you with stuffing. Right now, I find that this hole is plenty big enough for me to use my hands, but your polyfill should come with a little stick that you can use to push stuffing down in with, that you are more than welcome to use. And I do use my polyfill stick when I need to. It is a very helpful tool. So just working in kind of smallish chunks of stuffing and filling this up. Like I said, you want to make sure that you get down in the bottom and you really fill it out nicely. And this is why we crochet with a smaller hook, so that we can do a nice solid stuffing and not have to worry about seeing the polyfill in between the stitches. If you use too large of a hook for the yarn that you're using, when you go to stuff it, you'll be able to see your polyfill in between the stitches. And as your project starts to fill up, make sure you're checking how the corners are doing, if it's filling up, you know, and filling in the way that you want it to. If you need to kind of redirect polyfill at the bottom, that's a perfect time to pull out that stick, and you can kind of aim your polyfill around and fill in smaller areas. So don't mind the fact that it's going to kind of be bubbled right here. We are going to be separating that up and making it look like feet here in just a minute. So of course you can stuff to your preference of firmness. Everybody is different in how firm they like their plushies to be. For plushies like these, or amigurumi like these, whatever you'd like to call them, I like to do a nice sturm stuffing, because this is something that I want to look cute sitting on a shelf. I want it to be, you know, hold its shape really well and be decorative. But if you're planning on cuddling your creation, maybe you don't want it stuffed as firmly, and that is totally fine. You are able to customize this and anything you ever make in any way that you want, whatever works best for you. So I'm just going to keep stuffing and get that nice firm bod for Mario here. And you will be able to come back later and add a little more stuffing to the top. So keep in mind you will be crocheting in these stitches still with the skin tone. So, you know, if you don't feel comfortable stuffing super, super tightly up to here since you'll be stitching, that's fine. You can always add more stuffing in a little bit when we get to that spot. Now I'm just using my finger to kind of go around and make sure that there's stuffing all around these rocks that I put in here. I don't want my rocks to be what you feel, you know, I don't want it to be lumpy. So I'm just kind of working my finger down in here and sliding around the polyfill to shape it the way that I would like it to be shaped. All right. And I think that I am happy with that. So if you're still working on your stuffing, of course, you can always pause per usual. And when you are ready, rejoin me and grab that brown that you used for the feet. We are going to be using a length of that. Cut yourself a pretty good length. We want to make sure you would rather have too much than not enough. You can always trim it, you know, and make it shorter when you're done. So I'm probably going to get myself like a couple feet of this brown yarn just because I would rather make sure I have enough and not have to worry about running out. All right, once we've got that, make sure this is still focused nicely. You're going to go ahead and grab your sewing needle, and you can use any kind you want. You can use these little metal ones that are curved. The curve can really help to get your hook through and back out when you're doing things like faces where you're going to go in and then come out close by. Or you can use a larger one that is a little bit longer. There are a lot of different kinds. You can find all of these on Amazon. That is where I have gotten all of my darning needles. And a lot of times you can actually find packs that have like more than one size. So it's super helpful. But you can use whatever you would like. And we are going to be working ourselves some legs. So I'm going to work for now with this really long needle. And I'm going to put my yarn on it. The only issue with this really long needle is it has a very large eye, so it may stretch out my stitches a little bit, but that's okay. I can always go back and kind of smooth them over. Okay, so the thing that we're going to want to do is kind of find the center of the front of our plush. Now, if you remember, we basically found the center in the back when we were doing this color change. So if that still looks roughly centered for you, you actually can use that as the center. So if it's not all the way center for you, it still is a pretty helpful tool to know where the center is. So for me, I think that the stitch right before it is roughly centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push through in the straightest fashion that I can and come out the other side. This will be a little bit harder to do if you have a shorter needle, but I have done this with normal size needles before. So just do the best that you can. And pull your yarn through so that you have a little length in the back, but you don't need a ton. I'm going to leave myself like this much because I probably gave myself way more yarn than I needed to. Don't mind if you pull some stuffing forward while you're doing this. You can go through either with your fingers or with some tweezers in a little bit and get those little pieces of stuffing that are coming out. Yeah, I think that looks about middle to me. All right, and now what we're going to do is you're just going to go around. You see this bottom seam here where we had done these back loop only stitches or front loop only stitches. No, it would have been back loop only stitches. To curve our work up, it creates like a really, really visible seam. You're just going to go straight down from where you are into that. and then go straight across and pop your way out in the back. And it should line up with this too, if that helps you to see where you want to come out. And give it a nice tug. Now we'll go up here, back to where we had started, where we went in originally. And we're going to go through again, and we're going to pop out in the same spot. And that's going to help to secure it a little bit more so we can do a nice solid pull on it. There we go. And now what you can do is you can grab both of these and pull on them. Notice it's starting to seam up for us and kind of make some little feet. All right, and then one last loop around. This time we're not going to go through this stitch. We're actually just going to go straight across the bottom like this, all the way to that back stitch. Pop out the front in the same spot, so you might have to do it a couple times to find your spot. Just like that. So you've got this yarn running across the whole bottom. And then what we're going to do is you're going to take your needle and you're going to go down just a little bit. Actually, we'll go up just a little bit. So right between these two stitches right here, so that you're not going in the same stitch that you're currently working out of. And you're just going to go right back to the front. And you may have to do it a few times, but you want to come out in the same spot and give it a nice pull. All right, so now that you've got everything set up, you've got this little line going across here. It's starting to cinch in, but you're going to really give it a good cinch now. We're going to take the two strings that are coming out the same spot, and we are going to pull nice and tightly. See how that's looking like feet now? All right, and once you've got that pulled basically as tight as you possibly can, we are going to go ahead and tie a knot. Tie a nice tight knot, and then go ahead and double knot it. Oh, I am so sorry. Double knot it and pull it real tight. And check it out. Looking good, right? All right, and then I'm going to do one more knot just for a triple knot for extra security. And then we are going to hide these tails. Okay, so now that we've got that all done, we can go ahead and hide these tails. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to stick the yarn on my darning needle, and I'm going to go back in, pop out at any location, doesn't matter, we're just hiding our tails, and pull through. And there's one tail hidden. And then do the same thing with this other one, which you can cut a little bit shorter if you want to, if yours is absurdly long like mine is. Then you can go ahead and put this one on your needle. And do the same thing. Just pop out at a random location, give it a tug, and now you can't see the tails there anymore. And you can go ahead and cut these tails. And then you can just kind of massage it over the spots to hide the tails a little bit. And if you've got any polyfill sticking out, you can either use your fingers or you can just grab some tweezers and grab the polyfill that's sticking out. And there we go. We have created our little feet and leg kind of separation. And since he is weighted and stuffed, he stands up perfectly still. Ta-da! Here is kind of a good little overview of what you should be looking like right now. Here is the front. Rotating. Here's the side. And here's the back. Other side. And back to the front. So that is the first section of our Mario gnome.